Welcome everyone to our June Ordinary Council meeting. Declare the meeting open and call for apologies and applications for leave of absence from councillors. Councillor Dunn, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Brewer has been absent, seeking leave. Someone happy to move those to being absent? Entitled to leave. Thank you, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Derrick. With that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the minutes of the meeting, last ordinary meeting held on the 27th of May. Someone happy to move that those minutes are a true and accurate record of that meeting? Councillor Beach. Seconded, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Beach. No, thank you. Any further comments, questions before we put that? With that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to the disclosures of interest, and now you will have noticed that we now have a form that is required if you have a disclosure of interest in terms of a pecuniary or an interest otherwise. That needs to be filled out. Are there any councillors who need to declare a disclosure of interest? Councillor Derrick.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just regarding item 3 under the reports of the Management, Finance and Administration, offered up for this regarding the council chambers and administration building, of which Blake is the main builder at the moment, and it's not their interest in that place and fill up the appropriate form.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Derrick. There are no mayoral minutes. We move on to item 6 on our agenda, which is the report to the committees. The first of those being the only one being the meeting, the management committee held on the 16th of June. Someone like to move that report? Councillor Irving. Move, Councillor Irving. Second, Councillor Sevedy. Councillor Irving.
Yeah, I'd like to move the minutes. I still have some questions to raise from them. So my first one is related to executive office matters on page 2, item 4.1. I noticed that there are concerns at the Carter Oval Sporting Precinct that the areas for shot put, discus and long jump may not be sufficient, and there to be plans to be redone in early June. And I just wondered if those plans have been completed and...
No, Mr. Nick. Just make sure that it's listed and noted and not forgotten. And it's in May, a big May.
Thank you. And I'm pleased to see the review of the policy register. I thank the General Manager for doing that. It's really important to make sure that we're consistent and up to date with those. And the other, one other question I have is related to the WOW agency report. I think it's very, very helpful and informative. Just one of the things I was concerned about is they mentioned on their first page, talked about under the heading, the following communication activities were undertaken during May in alignment with Warren Shire Council's integrated content strategy. And if we're able to...
No, that's they're just saying here the things that we're trying to do for you.
Okay, so we don't, that's not ours.
No, it's really their contract to us through me.
Okay, thank you for that.
Not that really big thing that I'm still working on.
Thank you for clarifying that. I did have a question.
Mr. Mayor, well, senior management team and Mannix are fairly happy with the communication work that firm is doing. We're being conservative with how long we go into next year because we've got a budget constraint that we have to do, and we're all still learning how to actually make sure we provide information. Whoever it is, whether it's a staff member, this firm, another firm, everyone relies on, particularly management executive members, and even the mayor's, for example, Mayor's Desk, or you know, to provide input to anything that's been communicated. And we're still all learning how to make sure we actually organise ourselves and to sell to our community the things we're doing.
I'm pleased with that because it does promote the community engagement that we need by being proactive in this area. Just another thing to note, just with on page 1 of the human resources, it's under human resources, determination of vacant positions in accordance with the workforce plan. And the position is the accountant, and just wondering how we, I guess this is a question for the department, the manager of finance and administration.
If you
We're
can,
obviously coping without the accountant that we,
it's not funded. If you remember in our discussions, that's why it just sits there.
it just says that we've got the budget.
And so it's one of the positions that's actually in the workforce plan that currently in this year's budget and next year's budget in 6 days' time isn't funded.
Pretty there for me. There was also in the workforce plan a paid retirement position. So if I was to look at leaving and putting someone in, so I was just trying to rejiggle that so that when I do retire, that there's not going to be a big gap. And what makes it, I'm not looking at retiring, so I'm not looking at putting someone on just for the sake of putting someone on to fill up the workforce plan at this stage. So that's why it's been identified that it needs to happen at some stage, but it doesn't need to happen within the next 12 months.
Yeah, thank you. That was all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Any further comments, questions regarding the minutes of the next meeting? Councillor Sturdy.
Thanks for you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick query. The business development facilitator, I noticed they started the appointment on the 17th of June. Have they laid in?
It was actually 15.
Have they actually visited us yet?
No, but his bosses have, and we've had 2 teleconferences, and we're hoping that Owen is his first name. He's got a book. You should be able to pronounce his surname properly.
Surname.
Owen. That's a good Irish name.
How big the Irish names?
Yes. And he's expected to come to our, I think it's the 7th of July Economic Development Committee. I think that's the date of the next one. And he started the ball rolling with a little bit of help on one reasonably large grant application on behalf of a constituent organisation in the Shire. But he's aware of what we're wanting him to do.
It's amazing. The other query I just had was the Outback Arts Board meeting. It's now been changed to the 5th of July. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to be an apology for that due to previous engagement, but I will be sending in my treasurer's report and what have you, so it's various business papers. It's just happens to be on the same day, and I can't be in 2 cities at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sturdy. Any further comments, questions regarding the minutes? Meetings? Yes, Councillor Walker.
Yes, I'm not sure who to ask. It's about this thing that pops up, the Arana Housing Program.
It's an RBA research project that every council in the area is now been able to find $2,500 plus Dubbo Regional's got. We're actually bouncing off Dubbo Regional Council's very large housing. It's really housing for employment in the sense of attempting to see what's out there and how the state government and everyone else can help the Arana region to have housing that doesn't cause difficulties in the small and medium towns of employment. Good example, say, Councillor Williamson's, he's had to go and organise houses for his employees. How is everyone else doing it? Are the community service organisations trying to get people to new houses in towns that then become then other houses those people living in become rental properties for employees. So coming up with strategies to try to reduce limits on employment in towns like Wyong. Over the next 3 to 6 months, some report on all of us will start to come out, and hopefully that'll feed to ideas.
So it's surprising information that was studied.
Yeah, putting it all together, the Regional Development Australia grant
Yeah, but in this council, who gives them the information?
information from Mary Ann as much as possible.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the next meeting notes? There being nothing further, we'll put that. All those in favour? Again, carried. Moving on to the reports to council. First of these being the delegate reports. First of these being the meeting to be run at joint organisation on the 12th of May. I'm happy to move those, or I'm happy to move those from the chair. Someone have a second, Councillor Williamson. The minutes are there, is part of the business package, but the summary basically is that we, along with every other council, each council in the Arana JO have resigned from that organisation, and the letter has been forwarded to Mr Hancock, the Minister for Local Government, informing her of that decision. The second part of the meeting really was that, in an ideal world, some sort of collaborative organisation be established that really reconnected the councils that were part of the former OROC in an informal basis, so that the chair of the JO has taken to write to each councillor who was part of the OROC organisation, asking them to have some thoughts about how some sort of, well, first, if they were interested in forming some sort of collaborative organisation, and second, how that might run. And I think the General Manager, as part of the GMAC meeting, some of those discussions were had, and I believe there is a consensus that something that represents the whole region, in a collaborative sense, would be appropriate. It's just a matter of working through how that might occur. The second part of it is that we do make a contribution to the JO for about $12,000 a year, I think it was. Yep. And we could potentially use that for seed funding if we chose to move forward, or if something came to fruition that was a collaborative organisation that met our needs in terms of representing the whole region. Jeremy, I don't know whether you have anything further to add to the JO?
A very long report, but further on.
A long report further on.
And, Mr Mayor, I will. Stephen Glenn was accidentally still there, and that was a test, and Councillor Sturdy won.
Yes.
She picked it up.
Yeah, of course I do.
So, we need to amend this, sorry,
It's done.
it's done, it's done.
We asked them to do it.
Okay, good. That's very good.
See, the Mayor was trying to take your fund and then Councillor Sturdy.
No. Thank you, Councillor Sturdy. Any further comments, questions regarding the, meeting of the joint organisation? But the other point would be that we anticipate that the minutes will make no real decision until there's a review of the JOs going on at the moment, and I guess there won't be any real outcome for some time till that review is completed and the report's tabled. But the view anecdotally seems to be that any number of other JOs are struggling as well. So
Even the big ones.
Even the big ones. Yeah. So watch this space in terms of the JO organisations and how they might progress and how we might progress beyond there being a JO.
But just quickly, Mr Mayor, is there, I mean, you wouldn't go forward with an organisation unless Dubbo was to be a part of it, so the view for feeling like they're happening with it all?
They've had bigger things to deal with at the minute, Councillor Walker, but I would envisage, and I think there's probably potentially a more collaborative approach, potentially. But then we've got local government elections, so who knows what what falls out of that, so, yeah, let's just wait and see, but I think the intention from all the other councils, and even Gary wanted to comment, with, Dean Frost, at your,
No,
no.
but I think there was some correspondence that, even from, Dubbo, from the, acting CEO, I think he's actually been appointed.
I think that's now, yeah.
That he's actually is speaking positively that way. And, part of the general managers forum ideas was that in the end, the chair and the previous chair of the Irana Joint Organisation and their general managers actually go and meet with, if needed, go and meet with Dubbo Regional Council's mayor and CEO to get them back into the tent.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding the joint organisation council's meeting? That being the case, we'll put that, all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to item 2 of the report of delegates, that being the Mining and Energy Related Council's New South Wales report. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Irving, seconded. Councillor Bruce. Councillor Irving.
So unfortunately, the General Manager and myself were unable to attend this meeting on May 21st. And it is unfortunate because there were actually 3 speakers out of the 4 speaking on renewable energy. As you know, our council and the community are interested in moving forward with renewable energy in our shire. Just on page 3, just draw your attention to item 15, where it has the list of speakers. So the Honourable Adam Marshall did mention that renewable energy is the hot topic. Government today, and planning, and rural and regional New South Wales. And I'd like to note Rowan Long, the Joint Managing Director's comment. He's from General Energy, just revisiting and updating energy policies and procedures. And I thought, I know we've talked about moving forward with a policy on renewable energy as a shire, so I thought that was good to note that one, and that if we could eventually, I know our general manager's really stretched with other things, but down the track we can come up with our own renewable energy policy in a way that we can both attract solar project developments in our shire, but also integrate solar energy into the way we deliver our services, like power-wise. So yeah, I thought those were things to note. And
Councillor Irving. Councillor Slade, you have a question?
Just a query, it's a little bit of a side from this, but I was just wondering, with the solar factory that we have out at Nevertar, it's just sitting there like a stone dead. What's actually happening with it? It's kind of movement. Not happening.
Well, I can't be sure, Councillor Thursday, I don't know if it's the general manager or.
I wouldn't check it out a couple of weekends, couldn't get in, they wouldn't let me in because it's all locked up, but it's probably doing lots of power and putting it into the grid.
But you don't see anybody there. I mean, if anything happened, is there anybody actually in the site?
Keeping it on the sun.
I think that, I mean, traditionally, things like need 1 or 2 people to break them, so if you, Councillor Bruce is suggesting that there is someone.
I think there is one person that's a bit frustrated, but we actually did ask whether we could go as a council and have a look at it, see what sort of happened there. It'd be very interesting just to have a look at what
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the caretaker, or the person on site has contacted council about some of the issues. So yeah, there is someone on site that's maintaining the grounds and all this stuff. Yeah, I have contact if you'd like to mention trying to arrange a site visit.
That's good.
Very good, thank you, that's at least informed us of where we are, at least, yeah, thank you. Any other further comments on relating to the mining and energy related councils?
It's just a comment through Mr. Mayor to just highlight that Carlene's been very creative in this area and proponent of what they're trying to do and get us included as a council in this, renewable energy zone. She's been quite forthright in trying to get that happening. And I agree that down the track we probably do, we need a policy and council as an organisation to look in how that we can go forward with some type of renewable energy.
You want to do the next one, but I can say the senior management team are actually moving forward on eventually trying to work out how we can actually get everything put on some very large roofs of ours and start reducing our electricity over time. But that will require a expression of interest. We've already received some information, a proposal, but we're going forward with an expression for interest for everyone to actually have a go at giving us some proposals. We just have to find some time to do that. And you can imagine sporting complex here, depot, and maybe Shogun Racecourse, because a couple of very large facilities out there. That's our policy in the end. For a start, we'll try to save us some money. But we just have to find time to be able to get the expression of interest out there. Mr Mayor, we felt that putting to the council the one expression of interest that we received might not be as positive. Better if we try to trust everyone, then we've got an idea.
Any further comments, questions regarding the planning and energy related councils meeting? There being nothing further, we'll take all those in favour. Against carried. Moving on to the third item on reports of delegates, that being the Country Mayors Association meeting held not long after our last council meeting. In fact, the day after. I'm happy to move that. Someone happy to second Councillor Derrick. I think the basis of what we've discussed is in the minutes there. Interested to hear Melinda Pavey talking about water issues to a certain extent, but the bigger issue for most councils was the housing issue that's been flagged earlier in terms of RDA's questions. Those councils less remote than us seem to be, and not that much less remote, the Dubbos of the world and the Parks is having a real crisis in terms of, in their words, crisis, in terms of finding rental accommodation for employees wanting to move to their towns to support businesses. So that is a real issue. Water was actually very much second on her agenda, but part of her portfolio nonetheless. The other interesting presentation was from Shane Fitzsimmons, the now Minister, Resilience, Commissioner for Resilience, no longer require services. But the upshot of what he had to say was that in terms of resilience, again, attempting to be all-encompassing, he goes about, he's the head, then there's about 5 or 6 people underneath him. But what he wants is for people who have been affected by a disaster particularly, to have just one point of contact and not have to go through 5 different organisations and retell their story all the time. And that's his big focus, is get the information, get it once, be accurate with it, and then move along with that. So, yeah, I think he's got a big job. He's had a lot to pick up regarding, bushfires and COVID. I mean, drought before that, but that's probably, gone from his scope. But all these things feed in, and it's just a matter of trying to get all these things and government departments to not be too silo mentality, but all work together so that the outcome for individuals is as it should be. Something else to say. Yeah, look, I think Country Mayors is actually quite a good forum, particularly in that there's not, there's reasonable numbers yourself in the attendees. There's a fair number of councils attend them, but we do also take the opportunity to meet with ministers if we can program something in. I did have a chance to talk to Minister Pavey, and particularly about the concept of Burrendong going to 120% of present capacity, actually 100%. and water infrastructure generally, but particularly on Bonon, and then how we might set ourselves up for the next drought in the best possible way in terms of bore and how the other Prince Channel potentially the losses might be able to come there. And just getting adhere straight to government and people who can actually make a decision rather than having to talk to 10 people along the way. So I think that's the importance of the country. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I'm really pleased to see the health and telehealth on the agenda, especially with the GP crisis in country areas, and really great to see a letter going off about daylight saving.
Yeah, that was quite unanimously supported, that motion from Lachlan Council. And telehealth, I mean, we have concerns about health, but so does every other rural council, and some of those are really very strong on that. So it's good. Well, essentially, we're on the coattails of a lot of those people because they're making the noise, etc. They're making noise on their council, but it's such a widespread problem that New South Wales Health.
Oh, you're just seeing it with the inquiry, but it's,
it's not just us, which is, in some ways gratifying, but it's not a great position to be in. Thank you. Councillor Walker. Yes.
Just quickly for the levy, the emergency services levy, so that's been taken up by the state government again.
Yes.
That doesn't get around their long-term issue.
Hopefully round 2 or some other funding. Yes. Hopefully round 2 of the one that we...
Oh, no. You were talking about not levy bank. We're talking about emergency services levy. Yes, no, at this stage they'll make a contribution and probably refer to Darren on this one, but they'll pick up. How 12 months ago, is that correct, Darren, or am I misreading it?
I we've received advice that the actual contribution went down to 21, 22, and has gone up a little bit from 1920, so they're going to make the difference between 1920 to 21, 22, which I worked out to $5,800. But the big difference the previous year was right up to 180 odd thousand, now it's come down about 120, 130. Actually reduced it, actually what it was.
So it doesn't get down the problem.
But that's still, they've still got the pipeline with the ESL levy on possibly going on the individual as well. We're still talking about that.
Yeah. It's not resolved, it's just put back, Councillor Walker, is the way that I would be framing it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just with the Aboriginal housing, they were talking about tenants purchasing Aboriginal housing at the Puncheon. I know our CEO of the Land Council says the tenants, Aboriginal tenants in Warren, for public housing is actually, they're really good tenants. I know there's just a couple maybe that she has problems with. I think she manages, nearly 30 houses. And so I was just wondering, did they mention liaising with land councils on that, or that was just something that was
I couldn't be sure that they actually mentioned land council specifically, Councillor Irving, but there is an intention, as much as is possible, to allow tenants to purchase houses in which they live. And I think it was one of the commercial banks further down the street that was actually doing the funding for this. It was on a commercial arrangement, and I think this was happening on the North Coast, and I think it was proving to be fairly successful. So the upshot of it was that the rent was virtually equal to the repayments, and so it was a very financially attractive situation to be in for these tenants to purchase their own houses, and gave them some stability in their lives. I think it was good. Mr. Bailey did speak much about that. Just it was a sentence or two like we've just had, basically. But I think it's something that maybe the Lands Council could encourage, because it's certainly happening, and excellent result.
Yeah, I can't really speak on her behalf, but I can imagine that it would save her a lot of work and she could probably put her energies into other areas that might need that time. Thank you.
Any further comments, questions? Sorry, John, you've got something?
Can you just confirm the movement and second it?
Sorry, I moved that and seconded Councillor Garrett. Any further comments, questions regarding the, report? We the country meeting meeting? Nothing further, we'll put that, all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to the final report of the delegates, that being the Central West South Carolina Regional Energy Zone, Regional Conference Reference Group, someone happy to move that? Thank you. Second, Councillor Walker, Councillor Irving.
So the General Manager and myself attended a meeting, the Central West Carolina Regional Renewable Energy Zone Regional Reference Group meeting on the 2nd of June. It was quite an intimate meeting. There weren't a lot there in attendance. We felt very welcomed, even though we kind of lobbied our way into the group, and so that was lovely. And I felt Mike Young spoke very well, and it was informative. Just to highlight what he said, he's shifted. He's now Director of Planning and Communities, and he highlighted that the cheapest form of new energy is wind and solar, and the replacement energy. That's replacement energy from the loss of the coal-fired stations that they're phasing out. So, and they're just looking at long-term energy contracts to improve local employment and Aboriginal employment as well, opportunities, and they're working with, it's the Energy Corp of New South Wales has been established, and there's an access scheme that determines who can control access to the project so that there's no free riders, so it's all very managed. What I found too, if you look at in the report, the minutes on page 4, you can note that the General Manager and myself did speak on occasion at changing the boundary of this renewable energy zone so that it could be included. They did say that it wasn't, they were honest, they said it was not likely, but it doesn't say it's out of the question for down the track, only because they're on a time frame and they've been working with, so there's a few guidelines there, I guess they're restricted by. General Manager might like to add to that, because I was really pleased with the General Manager's efforts at that meeting to put forward our case. So thank you, General Manager.
Mr. Mayor, what we did do is afterwards, Councillor Irving and myself, as soon as we walked in, they pretty well accosted us, and because I think they realised that we might have been the one that might have started agitating for actually change. And one of their negatives that they were saying to wanting to actually have us or some of us into the zone was that prime agriculture, there'd be too much prime agricultural land. Now the zone and the corridor, the new transmission line corridor, goes from Burrendong Dam to Cassillis. And there's a reasonable chance that a fair amount of that area is a higher level of agricultural production land than, I'm not trying to be too rude, but the wet paddocks of Nevertide. So that's where we've had to go.
That's right. I think you're making the point.
So we're trying to make sure that they think about us. Because make it even better is what happens is there's an upgrade of the transmission lines, and everyone knows that the 133 kV line that goes through Nevertide to Ninga to Crowbar And don't forget, there's not just our 132 megawatt solar power station. There's the big one in Boghamshire as well. And from Nevertire onwards, it's the best bit of sunlight that you can imagine. And the 133 kV transmission line needs to be upgraded to at least the 330 so everyone doesn't brown out because it's full. It's full. And so two birds with one stone, from Wellington, Narromine onwards to Cobo gets upgraded, and we also get the corridor that everyone can go and do some solar farms. So we've had a go.
The other part of it you mentioned in passing was that the fact that if you're part of the renewable energy zone, it is much more favourable for companies trying to get funding to be part of that zone. So all those things fit together. You know, we've got a power line running past us at Nevertire's at capacity, but there's users there. We've got the space to build solar farms. I mean, it just, in my limited experience, doesn't make great sense. It's really a soft option going back east when there's the potential to really utilise the area out here. So anyway, well, I think we've got a firm advocate in Councillor Irving here and the General Manager. I think we need to pursue this and get some sensibility, some decision.
Just for these things, man, you read about all the development at Yarrowah, which is quite extensive and transform the area. And they're finding they can have solar farms with animals under them. I think there's ways in this. Might find you can grow crops, but you can have animals under them.
Yeah. I think we're missing the point at times, and government have got in front of themselves instead of just sitting back a little bit and saying, hang on a minute, what makes really good sense in the anyway. Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments, questions regarding the Central West Yarrowah Regional Energy Zone?
Actually, it's a good question. Yeah, they're talking about wind and solar, which is great. But what are they talking about trying to store energy? Because once the toll goes, what's going to happen? Like, the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't go all the time. So they're talking about batteries, or they're talking about other ways of storing it. Is it becoming economical to do, or it is?
That battery technology will be what saves us.
There was some information disseminated. I think you might have got it. It's a PowerPoint that explains the whole battery setup and the going involved. And yeah, they've got the technology now to make it cost efficient to deliver. It's all go. Yeah.
So they're going to be able to get the whole.
Yeah, that's the plan, only because that's to do with the, obviously, the greenhouse gas emissions we have, and yeah, it's to do with
Okay.
Which is Space Council.
Yes.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the Central West Yarrowah Regional Energy Zone? That report? No, there being nothing further to put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to policy, there are a number of policies to be reviewed. Now the report from the General Manager, first of those being the outstanding reports checklist. Someone is happy to move that. In that the ones with asterisks will be removed from that list. Thank you, Councillor Servedy. Second, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Servedy.
Yeah, happy to remove the reports, and you have answered some of the questions already in the previous meeting. There's one other one that I was just wondering if it was any update on. I've noticed the Wundamar Street one proposal for the Median Street, it's been on the books since September 2019, and it's been on hold, waiting for detailed plans and costings. Has anyone ever asked, where it's up to?
You're asking now, Councillor Servedy, where it's up to, so that we can. I think that was regarding the access to the tyre.
The tyre place, originally, wasn't it? I was just wondering if it was anything ever done on that.
Councillor Servedy, just help us a tiny bit. Which
you're on your, I think I'm on the right one, yeah, and it's on page, item 1, and it's on page
3.
I think it's, second item, the first item, the other was carried over.
Road, my street.
Yeah.
My street. This project resolved the access to the tyre service down there, and I did a report 2 or 3 years ago, just recommending that the segment of median in the middle of the street be removed to satisfy entry in there. And it was brought up by Councillor Williams that more depth investigation should be made, that could be maybe other services along there that need access, and so the tree reserve and the median down the centre may have to be removed. I've sort of parked because there's been no funding for it, but it's just a matter of me negotiating with the business houses that are there, partly negotiating unofficially with a couple of them, and I think probably need a bit of attention down the track.
So none of the other business houses have queried, what's happening?
No, they haven't pursued it. I just lightly mentioned it to them, like panel beams and that, they don't need access for big trucks. It's mainly the tyre service. And then because it has to have ingress and egress, there was a matter that I would have to then resolve with Transport for New South Wales that have the egress on the highway or access from the highway and egress via that. But there's definitely not enough room between the median to turn out. And we definitely don't want the large trucks going down near the Hale Street where the school is. So definitely contain them within that segment of street.
Thank you. Just a question to Rolly. But the back gates, is that, what decision was that that's not allowed, that's not used anymore, that comes on the way?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's more because of RMS don't like too many accesses from properties onto their road network. The ingress and egress be made at in Bundabar Street, and so there's no safety concerns on the highway, or no upgrade of intersections required or any of that type of stuff, because the tyre service has upgraded back access to satisfy transport, it'd be a massive cost.
Just one other one, the council houses we've been having the issues for, are they any further along the track, or no more feedback on that?
It does, but just a little bit now. It's being progressed, and we're hoping a full report to probably the August meeting. It's not guaranteed because we're waiting on advice from others.
Thank you. That answers questions, Councillor Sweetie. Councillor Walker.
I don't know who to ask. Nevertire is on the list of, the internet coverage, mobile internet coverage. I suppose I'm asking if council can help me and support. There's people north of Warren, and you're north of Warren, further out possibly, who are having terrible trouble with their mobile and internet coverage. They can have a whole day where they can't get on their internet, they can't do business, they can't do banking. So I'm wondering if someone was to come and see, say, the general manager and put a case, is there some way that maybe it can be supported by council to write letters or put it on the list like it is all the time?
I think probably our saving grace may well be Field Solutions Group, doing work at Nevertire. I think perhaps we need to get them in the office and have a chat and say what can you, because they've done similar things at Moree, for instance, 40, 50 k's west of Moree, and been able to, but the whole way that they work is they bounce things off towers that are relatively close and not all that high, so water towers and grain storages, etc. So maybe that is the area where we can go.
To get someone from that area to come and to meet with them then?
Well, I think we just need to, first off, see that there is a proposal that they move that way for a start, and then
I realise there's a lot of money in the latest budget for this type of thing in the state government, so
Commonwealth.
Yeah,
Commonwealth.
it's not near enough.
Field Solutions got about $20 million or something like that. Are you talking north of Warren? Are you talking Hatton Rig area?
I know they've got their tower, no, this is more, well, I suppose it's down the lane, Wisers.
Mount Foster.
Yeah.
It's,
I don't know how you go, Mark.
well, it's hopeless, yeah, because the Mount Foster one, it's sort of 3G dash, 3G dash 4G, but it drops in and out the whole time. But I thought it was included with the new tyre discussion.
My understanding was that it was probably going to be part of that whole program, but
But hadn't we was getting a solutions tower, I think?
That was just for them.
first stage,
Yeah, no, I think, I never sort of, well, that's what Mark Collins said.
go through that with you.
We should go through.
Well, it's been up.
Let's just,
Yeah.
let's have a chat with Field Solutions Group, because we're waiting for them to come and give a date so that we can meet with them on site at Nevertire to get it. And maybe post that if there's someone there down there that we might be able to talk to on that same day.
Mr. Mayor,
They're probably not,
Okay.
because they'll be only sending out text staff to,
Right.
well, first off, the printing, you can send some text staff out to this computer check works, to see where it's going to be suitable, and then they'll send out some other people in, so that might be anyone from, head office, if you like, something out of all.
But we can talk to their operations manager.
Yeah.
That's really just a series.
so, yeah, when Mark Colton came through there, he implied that Hatton Rig was just a personal tower, but I understood that solutions group, it was going to be more of a whole region tower out there, so that needs to be clarified.
Yes. I think that, yeah, it's more investigation to find out.
And Mr. Mayor, the problem is we need to make sure that Telstra's going on any of those towers, not just Optus.
Which we thought.
No, understand, it's an issue, it's a continuing issue. Yeah. Okay, working on it. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any further comments, questions regarding the outstanding reports checklist? Being nothing further, we'll put that, all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to the second item, for the general report for the general manager, that being the committee of delegates meeting and the recognition of Warren being a healthy town and the awareness of healthy lifestyle. Councillor Lee Channing, while moving to the second item, is the general manager's report. Someone happy to move item two, the report of the committee and delegates meeting. Thank you, Councillor Sturgis. You've moved that. Secondly, Councillor Derrick. Councillor Sturgis.
Just let me crack this back first. Sorry, I'm delaying the process, but yeah, no,
That's all okay. Do we want to add that, maybe with Mark, so that from, and do you want to have any comment regarding that meeting, that old item? Yeah. I will just note that the general manager and I did have a meeting yesterday with Mark Burdak from Rams, and we were going to have a Zoom meeting. He ended up turning up. Interesting his commentary. A couple of small things that Gary, you might correct me, but say 10 years ago there were 800 resident GPs in rural New South Wales. Now there are 200 permanent resident GPs in rural New South Wales. So we're at a real stumbling block situation. His view is that COVID has really affected the availability of GPs coming in from overseas and their movement around if they did come. The second factor is that many of those who are trained overseas, and even those who aren't, need some supervision for about the first 3 months. They're level 1, and I'm not, I'll stand corrected on this. Yep. So level 1 need full-time supervision for at least 3 months. So if that's the case, then the GP who's, say, resident in Warren won't be seeing any of his own patients, will be just supervising this person. So there aren't those GPs around who are willing to do that sort of thing. So even at level 2, which is 80%, 80% supervision. So that's another 6. Yeah, it's going to take a minimum of 12 months before they're going to be potentially standalone GPs. So how does that? He sees that as the biggest stumbling block, or as the biggest stumbling block as graduating educators from our local fellow university campus, and then an Orange, etc. I mean, that's those 5 years away. They'll start next year. So it's all down the pipeline. That there's some real difficulties in health and how it really is provided, and perhaps the view is that, I don't want to be nasty, but that health get a bucket of money, Western Local District, and then they decide how they're going to allocate it. And sometimes the money overrides health, if you can understand what I'm saying. So decisions are made in a budgetary way as opposed to a health way, with a health background. And sometimes, yeah, we probably are a little bit short-changed, for want of a better term. Maybe the default way to breaks the ground. But we'll have that discussion with Scott McLaughlin on the 11th of August, I think it is. Yeah. So, but Mark Woodacre still sees, as do West Local District, sees GPs as being a cornerstone of the smaller town. So at least that part's similarly aligned. It's just a matter of how we get those GPs on the ground in line. Anyway, that's the when we go. The generation are going to have another one and try and come up with some sort of proposal that makes sense that we can go forward with, but Rams can go forward. You know, they've got practice in Colorado and Wilder, yeah, obviously forgotten exactly where that, but they're in the same boat everywhere, so it doesn't matter. So he is trying to come up with some sort of plan that best use of funds and resources to get the outcome.
We can't really talk about that proposal that he's
No.
to improve themselves, getting those L1s, L2s and L3s supervised, and then eventually out here. But he's got some sort of plan.
Just a comment. The big problem is though, a lot of these GPs, they get qualified in the room. You know, just trying to keep them here.
I'll add in some sort of indenture program.
Yeah.
And I also add something that I was told that Neil McCarthy spoke very well about this Dr. Strasser, who is the founding dean of the Northern Ontario Medical School. They put all he only has students that are in the local area, not over the mountain, and has a retention rate of over 60%. And I'm really disappointed that Scott McLaughlin, I don't know what they look at, but it's worked. He's now in New Zealand doing the same thing. It works. They really need to start looking at a program that works and has runs on the board. And you don't say they're rural when, you know, Alison Stokely said her daughter's the only one that's this side of the mountains in a medical course. So it's very disappointing, and I just hope that Lands is being proactive with the government and trying to get them.
I think so.
Just comment, Councillor Walker, I have the 90-page thing that Neil McCarthy was talking about, so if you want to have a look at it, he gave me, I've been looking at it, it's 90 pages.
It works, but runs on the board.
No, he's very...
Anyway, I think they're the sort of questions we pose to Scott McLaughlin when he comes, and my understanding is that the Dubbo cohort is 47 or 48, and my understanding all of those are from a rural background, but I again, Councillor Walker, take on board what does rural mean. Yeah. Any further comments, questions regarding sorry, Councillor Erwin?
That's okay. The two meetings there that were held, the Warren Lions Club representatives and the Adult Writing Club representatives, I just wanted who attended those and what were the outcomes?
That's what's going to be reported to the town improvement committee. What counts? So the first one is the Lions Club. The Lions Club want to progress the toilet block at Lions Park and some improvements. We do too, as a priority, as being the priority after the main street toilet block, which is progressing, and the cemetery toilet block, Warren Cemetery toilet block, which is almost finished. There's a $52,000 contribution that can come from all Dinsdale's bequeath. Some money that they're prepared to put in. What we're having to do is to set up a plan and some estimated costs. And what we're really hoping for is, and we've been applying for grants for the Lions Club, the Lions Park toilet block, because the ultimate is to probably have a self-cleansing toilet that has minimal maintenance. But that type of toilet costs between $190,000 and $250,000, and that's not completely 100%. It might be a bit around that cost. But then we don't have such a large cost to go onwards. It's been progressed. Out of the Shogun Racecourse, we had a fairly good and intensive meeting. We're progressing with some information being obtained from our Chance Hour expert and their expert, and we're getting together to finalise progression, which has also included, we think, a budget that is under a little bit of pressure, but not as much as we thought.
Thank you, General Manager.
Very good. Councillor Walker.
I was just interested in the meeting with Ken Harrison, Department of Regional New South Wales, when he popped out.
Very interesting meeting. I had two matters. Finalisation of the requirements of the business development facilitator that they are employing, 50% us, 50% Waltershire, and also some Burma lease matter.
Just a comment, I'm sorry that Councillor Brewer isn't here to give his take on how the local roads congress, what he got out of that meeting, but the General Manager was there.
We'll get to item 6 of the General Manager's report, and
So,
Councillor
it would have been interesting to see what he,
Yeah.
Councillor, anyway.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the committee delegates meetings that have been held and forthcoming meetings? That being the case, put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Duncan. Please be seated, councillors, and I'd like to walk up here. Welcome Duncan Lovelock as Principal of Lions Central School, been here for how many years now, Duncan?
Yeah, this week I'll complete 6 years. It's the first time I've seen you look for a having that playing the
And that's completely untrue. Thanks, Duncan. Sorry. Yes. Duncan, just so that you do know, our meetings are recorded.
Yes.
So that be aware and look to your best side.
Where's the camera?
To your left.
I'll still go away.
But look, thanks Duncan for making yourself available to come and speak with council. I think education is one of those core issues in our community that we need to understand, be aware of and support, and get the best outcomes for the students who are at school in mind and choose to stay and have their education at the highest possible standard in Warren. It's great to have Duncan here to bring us up to speed as council, because some of us are working towards that stage, but some of the progressed past the stage of children at Warren Central School, or any school for that matter. And it's good to just hear where you are and where Warren Central School is progressing.
Okay. All right, once I get this to work, good.
Should we do that?
Just while you're having practice, we're just setting up our minutes.
Okay.
Do we normally suspend standing orders for?
Yeah, we should. Just before Duncan speaks, I'd ask if someone might move that we suspend standing orders. Councillor Sergi moves that. Second, Councillor Drews. Just so that we have the opportunity to speak with Duncan and fairly freely. Any comments, questions before we put that? That being the case, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thanks, Duncan.
All right. So just before I begin, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Walluwan people, and in the spirit of reconciliation, pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to Aboriginal people who are with us today. Please mind me, I'm proper on fire, so I'm doing my best. Part of what I wanted to do today is talk about two different things, time permitting. One is to show you a 6-year improvement of Warren Central School and where it was and where it is now. And I might touch on the future of education. So it's a very, how can I say, it's a very complex idea and point as to where education is going in the future, because you would have just seen in the state budget that a whole bunch of money's been thrown at education. What we do know is that by 2030 in New South Wales we need 11,000 more teachers just to cater for expected growth. So huge challenges ahead of us in terms of traditional teaching models and how that's going to work. And I'll talk to you about some of the things that I've been doing, both at Warren Central School and across the network and between networks and helping out other schools in terms of the success that we've had at our school. So I came here in 2015, July 12th, something like that, and I walked into a school that was basically at an all-time low. It was basically a train wreck school, and I was brought into the school to fix it. The issues that we had were, we had a lot of complaints from staff, students, parents, community. We had lack of processes, lack of procedures, multiple staff performance and conduct issues, teaching not happening, teaching not happening the way it should, and so forth. So I had a lot of work to do when I got there. The staff culture was basically that when a staff member went to a professional learning somewhere, they wouldn't actually wear their name badge because the school had such a poor reputation that they actually didn't want to tell people what school they came from. That's where the school was at. So they didn't. There was basically a lack of passion within the school, a lack of standards within the school, and there was non-existent leadership at the school. So basically, we had students running around doing whatever they liked. We had lots of aggression, lots of physical fights. We had minimal student learning happening, school property being damaged, teachers being threatened, teachers being assaulted, parents threatening teachers, all that type of thing. It was not good. And so I had a big job to do, and I knew that it was going to take me at least 3 to 5 years to do it, although we basically did it in 3. In the last 2 to 3 years, we've just been building from that. And in the community, the school had a terrible reputation, and some people still hold on to that, but we're a very, very different school now. My initial challenges at the school were staff were highly resistant to change. I had a lot of issues with staff in terms of bringing them up to speed and where they needed to be, in terms of providing a quality public school education to the kids in our community. There was a lot of toxicity within the staff. There was a lot of issues from the community that were in the school. The behaviour of students was appalling, and I had to deal with multiple staff who had significant mental health issues. So, a few things to do. What I did focus on was, the first thing I did was, I told all staff, and I made all staff accountable for their performance and conduct and student performance and student learning, which was something new to them. And I was very, very open and transparent with my decision making and what I wanted to do and how I was going to do that at the school. So, because I didn't have a leadership team really at the level I wanted it, I had to build it, and I had to build it within, and that's what I did. So I did a lot of coaching and mentoring of my executive staff to build them and develop their capacity to be effective leaders within the school at every level. So what we were doing was, we just weren't having a leadership structure where the principal was running everything. We had effective leadership at every level to develop leadership density in the school. And that's what makes a successful school. If people leave and people come in, it doesn't matter. The school keeps going. Where if it's just about me and I leave, well, the school will fall away fairly quickly. All future recruitment decisions were basically centred around the skill sets that I wanted in the school. And so that sometimes I would advertise 3, 4, 5, 6 times until I got that person. I just didn't basically employ upright and breathing because they were available and they were convenient. And that's what we do right now. It's very, very hard to get a job in my school. By year 3, which is basically 2017, I had to manage the performance and conduct of a number of staff, and to the point where those staff are no longer in education. With staff recruitment, I found my business background to be very, very handy in terms of the skills that I brought, so that I could develop accountability, develop process, develop policy, develop compliance, and implement that across the school. And as a result, student performance has significantly increased from year 1 to year 3, and has significantly increased since then. One of the, obviously the issues that I found was within my leadership team, I had people who just didn't have the capacity to do the job, so I had to manage them and move them on. That is not a pleasant process when you've got a number of people who are in that position, and you're trying to run a school and do all these things at the same time. So basically I had no life, but I knew that in order to get this done, in order to get to the school to where I wanted to be, these are the things that needed to be done. And I came under, how can I put it? Well, it was fairly extreme in the sense that, staff complaints were rolling out one after the other. But as soon as we got through all that, and basically they had nothing left in the tank to talk about in terms of me and all the bad things I was doing, I was able to start cleaning house, and that's what I did. So what I started doing was, I've noticed in Western New South Wales that there's a real problem with leadership and leadership development within schools. And it's not just in public education, it's cross sectors. And that's the problem that we're finding in education at the moment. So I set out with my director at the time to actually start building a leadership team and a leadership network within the network and across the network. So I started what we call a Aspiring Leaders program. And from that, we're able to develop some evidence-based pedagogical skill within the staff so that they could actually do that with kids. So the things that they're actually doing in the classroom, we had evidence and research around what those programs were, how they were implemented into the school, the type of staff training that needed to exist, and what the outcome would be with kids. So we've done some work around some different evidence-based things, which I won't go into, but I will mention one person, and that is Professor Diane Seaman. And what we do is we've actually got kindergarten kids who can group and count to 100 by the end of kindergarten, where they're only supposed to go to 20. That's what we're doing with kids from Warren. We're doing that with kids, with the majority of them, who come from severely disadvantaged backgrounds in terms of their socioeconomics. We're not doing that with, you know, kids who come from middle income or high income families. So all that work has been recognised around the network, and through my executive director, someone who looks after 465 schools in New South Wales or in South and Western, about what we're doing, and I'm helping other schools roll these things out. One thing I did notice was that when I went away in 2017 for 9 months, I didn't go away, but I went away onto another project, and that was helping implement systems, financial systems in schools across New South Wales for 9 months, that when I came back, the data fell away. So the importance of stable leadership within the school was evident to me, in the sense that the school went like that. When I went away, it went down. As soon as I came back, it went straight back up again, and it just kept going. So this is the importance of having really, really good leadership in schools and developing that, and that's a passion of mine. By year 5, we had some massive improvements in the school in terms of staff, what they were saying about the school, what they were saying about their training, about their workplace, about their culture. And as a result, we've had staff sick leave reduced by more than 50% since 2016. We've had workers' compensation leave, which has gone from hundreds of days, which has been down to 0 for the last 3 years. Other leave is drastically reduced by over 80%. We have, the last 2 years, we've had a 3% or 5% staff turnover rate in a rural and remote environment. We've created a culture of confidence and trust within the school and within the community. Our P&C has grown massively, and we've had a 25% increase in student enrolments from last year to this year, where every other school is facing declining enrolments in rural and regional New South Wales, because of all the things that we're having to do with one after the other. Our student performance results have been outstanding. So in terms of like schools, whereby we actually can compare ourselves to schools that are similar to us in terms of location, nature, socio-economic background and so forth, we're above those schools and have been for 6 years. And we continue to stay there, and we continue to grow. And that's because we actually utilise data sets on student performance. We actually give every child an individual learning plan based on their strengths and their weaknesses. And we use research and evidence. We just don't have them rock up into the classroom and, you know, teach them and, you know, look up to the heavens and hope. Everything we do is based on data. Data. We know every kid intricately, we know about what they need, and then we provide the supports around that. So it can be school supports, it could be non-government organisations, it could be learning wellbeing teams, it can be all sorts of things, but we get those kids what they need. COVID was an interesting year because it taught us a different way to go about education, as you no doubt noticed within your own organisation and with your own businesses. The thing about it is that my own personal viewpoint on Zoom technology, Microsoft Teams and all those types of things, they do have a place, but I find them very, very impersonal in terms of learning. And when the kids aren't in the classroom, it does make a difference. It really, really does. It's, from my perspective, as old school educator, I guess, it's very, very important for me that kids are in classrooms, but that may not be the future as to where we go. So the thing I'd probably tell you is that when I came back to school in 2018, the number of suspensions that we had at school, more than 600 days of learning was lost due to me suspending children at school for various things, which reduced to 300 days in 2019, which reduced to 150 days last year and 6 days this year. That's the difference in the school. And that's because where we have high standards, where we don't tolerate any type of aggressive behaviour, rudeness, whatever you want to call it, and we've developed a positive learning culture within the school. So why there is still some lag in terms of how the community perceives the school, that's the school, that's the data, you can't argue with it. That's where we're at. So what does this mean? Why has this happened? Because I've done a lot of training with staff around how to manage student behaviour. So before I became even a deputy principal, when I was a head teacher, I was in a very, very big high school. I used to manage all the naughty kids. We used to call the naughty roll. All the kids were constantly suspended. I managed them because I was the only one basically in the school, bar a few other people who could do it and knew how to do it. And all I've done is transfer the schools I wanted to them. So, does it mean that we still have kids who don't do the right thing? Of course, because they're teenagers and they're kids, and that's what kids do. But all that high-level stuff that we used to have going on all the time, we don't have that anymore. That's all gone. The things that we concentrate on now, you have your mobile phone out in the classroom, you've been warned, you do it again, you're suspended. That's where we're at now, to where we were 5 or 6 years ago, where the place was just berserk. I've been able to successfully ban mobile phones in the high school, as well as the primary school, and there are two reasons for that. One is a learning reason, in terms of them being focused, engaged on what they're trying to do. The second reason being is that a lot of kids don't know how to use mobile phones, and it gives them an opportunity to bully, intimidate, harass, whatever, because they don't know how to use social media, they don't know how to use this technology effectively, and a lot of adults don't either, just quietly in this community. As I've seen on your Facebook post, council Facebook post, but anyway, that's another story. So by getting rid of the behaviour, we've been able to drive and build a learning culture within the school, whereby we want kids to be aspirants in terms of what they want to do and what they want to achieve when they move forward later in life. To give you an idea of how successful we've been, I had a meeting with my executive director a couple of weeks ago. He's the guy above the guy. So he's the guy who's responsible for rural South and West, over 400 schools. He came out to the school and interviewed me for 4 hours about what I was doing with the school and what we're doing with the school and how the school's improved. So you don't get a guy who's going to come to Lauren and Sydney for 4 hours for nothing. He's looking after all those schools. He's, he's in the upper echelons of the Department of Education, unless we're doing something right. So that's a really, really good story for Warren Central School, in the sense that the school is moving forward. The school has now moved from a position of weakness to a position of strength. Everyone is actually coming to us and asking us for help, and I'm helping a number of schools around our region with different projects in order to improve their schools, because that's part of the new ethos of Department of Education, whereby schools that primarily work in networks or in silos. We now have something called the school success model, whereby we work within networks and we work across networks, so we can actually pair schools up with another school who's doing something really, really well. So if I have school A here who's really struggling and not doing something very, very well, and then we have school B here who's doing something really well, and they may be 600 kilometres away, we start putting them together so they can learn from each other. And it's about everyone in the system having responsibility for student learning, not just the school, not just the network, just not the principal or the teachers. It's about moving forward and everyone taking responsibility for that. So they're the buzzwords and the things that you're going to hear in public education moving forward. It's a very, very different model, but it's about making everyone accountable for student performance. But what I can say to you is that I have got the team I want at the school. We have a very, very strong executive team. We have a very, very powerful learning culture. We have a very, very strong wellbeing system, of which Carleen does a lot of work at the school in her different roles with that, because there are kids here in this community who do come from very traumatic backgrounds, highly disadvantaged, massively disadvantaged in terms of socioeconomics and so forth. Approximately 60% of the parents of kids at my school have not worked in the last 12 months. So that's the type of thing that we're dealing with here. The thing that I can say to you is that while we're doing all that, moving those kids forward, we also have some very, very bright sparks at the school as well, and kids who are doing extremely well, to the point whereby we've already identified them in year 3. They're now in year 5. There's a group of them in year 5. We've already identified them. They are actually the kids who we're actually starting to develop now to get band 6s when they're in year 4. We're starting now on that because we've already identified their strengths and where they're going, and we don't want them to slip backwards. We're actually accelerating them and moving them forward, so when they get to year 12, they will do it very, very well. And you'll see band 6 after band 6 after band 6 coming from these kids, because we're not waiting, we're doing it now. We're putting all that groundwork in now, all the things they need to know now. We look at all their data with their reading, with their numeracy, with their comprehension, with how they inference, understand things, and they're going great guns. So on that note, I would say I'm very, very proud to be the principal of the school. I'm very, very proud of the team, teachers at the school and the kids. You do have an outstanding public school here. You do have an outstanding school who is actually providing a quality public school education, which is being recognised within the school, within the community, within the network, and in Sydney. So, I'm happy to take questions if you've got any.
Thanks, Duncan, for that overview of the transformation of Warren Central School. A number of us have been part of that, well, prior to your coming here, well and truly, and I think we're pleased, and our children who have attended Warren School will be pleased to hear whether it's on that sort of trajectory. So, congratulations to you and your team. But, Councillor, is there any questions that people would like to ask to Duncan as the principal of Warren Central? Yeah, Councillor Lee.
Yes, Duncan, I just noticed Councillor Lee nodding through your whole presentation, so that's
I did give it, I slipped her a quick $20 before.
With your suspension, what happens to if they get suspended? They're
provided with work to do when they go home, and they go from home, and they're expected to provide that when they come back. And then after a child is suspended, they have a meeting with either me or with Rob Taylor. Rob Taylor, there's done. She normally does all the what can I say, the lesser stuff. I do the more harder stuff, or the complex things. And we have a meeting with the student and the parent with regards to what's occurred, and we try to obviously go through some restitution about what has occurred, why has it occurred, because there's sometimes with children, the fact that they're acting out, you need to get to the reasons to why that is occurring, and sometimes that is not very evident until you really drill down into what is actually happening with a child or with a family. Sometimes a child is just acting out, or they're doing things like this because it's a cry for help. That's just where they're at. It's a cry for help. They're basically saying, please just help. And so that's why we have a really strong wellbeing. You'll see lots of stuff that we do at the school. We have a very, very strong wellbeing focus at the school for that reason. Everything is built around the wellbeing of the school, the wellbeing of the kids and the wellbeing of their families. And we use the school from this. We get counsellors, we get psychologists, we get people from non-government organisations in to help families. You'll see a lot of people coming in and out of school all the time because we use the school as a hub, whereby we connect families or kids to services that they might not be aware of, because if they turn up to their house and everyone in town knows what's going on, so they can come into the school, we can do things very, very confidentially, and we can get the supports and things they need. And in a lot of instances, when we're actually able to do this, work with paediatricians, work with different health professionals, work with Royal Far West and other people, we're able to solve these issues. But the fact that behaviour has occurred is not necessarily just because the student's being nasty or the student has behavioural issues or whatever the case may be. It may be something very, very different.
Councillor Williamson.
You find out now in the culture, like with teachers, when you put out for ads, you get a good quality range of teachers putting in for how to get in?
Not necessarily, Brett. So I do my homework on everyone, both on the record and off the record, because I know a lot of people around the traps in different areas, and people applying for jobs. If they're not up to it, they don't even get an interview. Let alone get employed. One thing I don't do is employ upright and breathing just because they're available. I'd rather go without a teacher than have one that's not up to it. And that's about just maintaining that standard or improving the standard. So sometimes that can create issues in terms of workload for other teachers, but a case of point is that if one does slip through the system, they're well aware of it. And for the teachers who have been here for a long, long time, they are aware of what I've done with school, and people are employed and they don't want to go back to it. Just creates more issues.
Because Jack, if you get a teacher who does fall through the system, is it easy to move them on?
We have a process in place it's called, it's governed by what we now call performance and ethical standards. So we work with a part of the Department of Education whereby if it's performance-based or whether it's conduct-based, sometimes it's both. But in terms of performance, if they're not doing what they're required to be doing, well, they do go through that process. Initially, it's about support and trying to bring them up to speed. So sometimes with, as you know, with employees, if you have employees, they have things go on in their life, they drop the ball because of all these things that are going on, and they just need support to get them back to where they were. They could have a whole bunch of things going on, or they could just be incompetent. So depending on where they're at, we put those processes in place. It's always about support to start with, but if that support program doesn't work, then they go into a formal performance program, and if they fail that, well, then a number of different disciplinary things can happen depending on the severity of what's going on, up to dismissal, demotion, whatever.
Is Warren Central, is it part of the incentive-based program to get teachers?
Yes and no.
So, and if it's incentive-based, what's provided that is there?
All right, so every school is given points in terms of where they're at and the desirability to work there. Most schools in Sydney are 1 point school, right? So that means it's highly desirable to work there. Warren Central School is a 4.5 year incentive school, which means that staff can stay here for 5 years, earn 4 points a year. So in 5 years, they get the same transfer points as someone in Sydney would get in 20. So it's an incentive for them to come out, but then it's an incentive for them to go back if they want to. The thing that we're finding is they're not leaving. It's good. The thing around it, I actually work with a principal reference group called the Rural Remote Reference Group. So we work closely with people in Sydney, and we at the moment, and I work with the Secretary Principals Council as a whole, and we make recommendations to the senior executive around the things that we consider that are needed in order to bring teachers out here as part of the incentive package. So up the road, they get, up to a $30,000 recruitment bonus and things like that. We don't get that. But we do get the other things, and they do get 50% subsidised housing, but the standard of housing is not up to scratch as far as I'm concerned. And I've had, quite a lot to say about that in terms of, being a strong advocate for not only teachers in Warren, but teachers in all these areas. Because the fact is that what we do know, I think there's been a couple of articles in the Herald this week around this. And the thing is that if we don't get good people out here, our kids suffer. Right? And the thing is that we've got to have conditions that are attractive to them to come out. And it's not about actually years of service. It's actually about with teaching. You can have someone who's been teaching for 20 years, you can have someone who's been teaching for 2 years, and the person who's been teaching for 2 years is all over the person who's been teaching for 20 years. Because it's about their suitability, about all their personal factors, about their work ethic, about their passion, desire, whatever it is. The fact is that it's not only, we're actually pretty good in Warren. We don't actually have a staffing issue, which is really, really good. But you go down to most centres, they do. All around us, they have staffing issues, but we don't. And that's a byproduct too of what we're doing at the school. And the other thing is that the first thing a person does when they're looking at the school is they Google it. If they see a whole heap of issues or things happening at the school, they don't go there. Well, there are lots of examples, but and it's not just about public education either. So through the sectors, what do you do? Well, you Google it. So if I want to go and work at Macquarie Toyota, the first thing I'm going to do is going to go and Google it. And if I see a whole heap of issues coming out or something, I'm going to go, I'm going there. But if I see, look, it's a wonderful place to work, well then, that's going to affect the decision that I make. So, we've got all these complex things which are happening in education. And from my point, I'm not only trying to improve Warren Central School, I'm trying to improve the system.
Just another, you touched before on accessing the paediatrician, etc. with OTs, things like that, what's your wait time to get access to these people coming?
Yeah, it can be up to 8 months. But the thing is that we push pretty hard, and in most instances we have a very good relationship with the paediatricians in Dubbo, and in most instances we can get people in there within 2 to 3 months. But still, it's a long way. And when you've got kids with all sorts of medical and behavioural needs, and as they're growing, the thing with a child is that you give them some medication, but as they're growing, that medication can be less effective or not effective at all. And if you've got to wait again to get in there, then that becomes a problem for the school and behaviour and all sorts of learning and all sorts of other things. But, you know, we work really, really proactively with families. A lot of the times we're helping them make appointments, we're helping them connect with services, doing what needs to get done in order to get an outcome that we want. So, and we're happy to do that. So there's lots of things that happen behind the scenes with kids that no one sees, not even my staff.
And you're the one that does a lot of that?
I do it, Jenny Brooker does it primarily. Yeah, he's my head teacher of wellbeing. Yeah, and she does a wonderful job.
That, yep.
Councillor Walker and then Councillor Derrick.
So I was just wondering I talk to teachers. It's got 2 questions. I mean, and a lot of the time I hear that the paperwork and the reports and, you know, that's a big part of the time. And I think there's ways if they need to, and the time it takes, or there's ways of changing that. And also, do you think that the education of teachers and when they go to uni and the way that that's been formulated and if it's a good course? Because if you have to, you know, a lot of people go and never be a teacher because you go into the class and you get abused and things thrown at you. Is there anything that you can comment on?
Well, I'll take the first question. So I think that's a workload question for teachers. Is that correct? So that's currently part of the industrial wrangling that's happening between the New South Wales Teachers Federation and the government. So you would have seen, the government on Monday whereby they're only looking at giving teachers, say, a 0.3% pay increase. They've actually gone back to the old public sector model. So for years and years and years, the New South Wales government has agreed to a 2.5% wage increase with no wage trade-offs. They've gone back to that, but the union aren't happy with that because of all the extra administration demands. Probably what you're going to see at the end of the year is industrial action across the state, most likely. And once the public school teachers go out, everyone will go out. So the issue is that obviously the New South Wales government don't want that to happen before a March election. So that's one, but there are significant workload issues. Teachers do work a lot harder in terms of compliance and accountability and what they've been asked to do, even from 5 years ago. And that's across sectors. So what you normally find is the thing about issues in schools is there's issues that you have in public schools, the issues that you have in independent schools, the issues that you have in Catholic schools. All the same issues, all the same pressures. You simply question around desirability to become a teacher.
Yeah, and do you think that the present training of them when the university is preparing them?
No. So when I was in Oxley High School, I did a lot of work with the university around a pilot program where we had a connected classroom whereby they would watch me teach and they would learn from me. And I would do different things and utilise different techniques and do things wrong deliberately to see if they could pick things up. And it was a very, very powerful program. The feedback that we got from it was really, really good. And, you know, obviously some very, very good acting from my kids who were asked to do certain things. And they'd be in trouble if they did it normally. So for them to do it was actually a big step because they weren't used to doing that. But it was a very, very powerful thing. And the big thing around children is management. So my thing around teaching is that you can learn all the pedagogy in the world about what the best teaching techniques are. If you can't settle a child, you can't teach. So if they're rolling around on the floor with a Chromebook, You're not teaching them. You've got to learn how to manage them. And you've got to learn how to engage them. And the thing about engagement is that you look at kids today, they're much more complex and much harder to engage than our generation. Much harder. So let's say, for example, you go on a car trip, you have all the whinging in the back. You might give them a puzzle or a colouring in book. Well, now it's all about iPads and this and that and all the rest of it. If they don't have it, well, they scream and shout and throw tantrums just like we did. But their attention span is that of a gnat, really. And the way that they go about things and do things is very, very different. So where you would source information, you would go to a local town library and do all those things, or if you had, the fucking wagon or sort of the Encyclopedia Britannica in your house, you can sit really well off and really, in terms of your social status by having that information and that power. All that stuff's now available. Anyone can access that. So it's not about access, it's about how you actually manipulate, how you use information, and that's the way forward, from as far as I'm concerned. And it's about emotional, like you ask my staff, I always talk to them about emotional intelligence. And to me, they call it a soft skill, I call it an essential skill. It's something that you have to have in order to be a good leader and be a good teacher, especially when you're dealing with children. If you don't have it and you can't get their attention and you can't engage them, well, you can't teach. So you can have all the knowledge in the world, and this is the thing you find, you can have some extremely, I've seen in my career, extremely intelligent people, people who come from engineering backgrounds, come from science backgrounds, come from all sorts of backgrounds where, highly intelligent, much more intelligent than me, can't teach. It is a real skill, and it's very, very difficult, and you have to have a lot of patience to be a teacher. If you don't have patience, you probably should go and do something else.
Councillor Derek.
Thank you, Duncan. Thank you for speaking so frankly to us and giving us so much great information. I just wanted to ask about the enrolments. You mentioned the 25% increase, which is great. Is that for us both primary and secondary? Or
mainly primary, because we've done a lot of work down there. We've got a really, really good team down there. There are a lot of other issues obviously happening in the town that I'm not going to go into. But what I do is I concentrate on what we do and what we do well. And the feedback from kids who come to us and the feedback from the parents is they do like explicit instruction. They do like teacher-centered learning. They do like the fact that everything they do has a meaning, has a purpose. So everything that happens from the time that a primary student gets to school in the morning to the time they leave, everything is programmed. Everything has the outcome. We check everything. We do data and we do check-in assessments. We do something called progressive achievement testing. We do NAP plans, just something we use to triangulate other things that we're doing. Where NAP plan testing is used by most schools as their primary data source, it's really a secondary or tertiary source for us. It's not our primary source. And because of that, we know kids, we know exactly what their reading levels are, we know exactly what their numeracy levels are, and we track them twice a term. So every 5 weeks we test them, we know where they are, have they grown, have they regressed, what they have grown in, what they still need help with, and then we refine and everything that we do with that group and then move forward again. So teachers are working really, really hard in terms of having to actually address all those things that are happening. We have teacher aides, or what we call SLSO, student learning support officers. To help with those things, we do occupational therapy, we do speech, we do lots of different things at the school to move kids forward wherever they're at. So wherever they are, whether they're highly intelligent or whether they need a lot of support or help or anything in between, we've got individual programs for them. And that's why you're seeing the success of the school as to where it's at, because they just don't rock up, walk into class and go home. That may be what they think, but that is exactly but that is not what is happening. And so, and we have a strong pedagogical base around what we do and why we do it. So when people ask me what I do or what we do, or what does it look like, I can tell them exactly. I can give them exams for different children or whatever the case may be, and hence why I'm going around here, there, all over the place and helping people out with different types of programs that we're running. And yeah, very, very proud of what the staff we have. They work extremely hard, and they're a credit to the community, credit, you know, to what's actually happening. So really come out with that.
That was great to hear, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillors, I'm mindful of time. I'm going to invite Duncan to stay with us for some morning tea, if he has the time.
Are you charging?
No, I'll start today. There you go. And so, please have a chat with Duncan.
Yeah.
And,
I'm happy to talk.
yeah, but thank you so much for coming
Thank you.
and bringing, you know, spent a little time since we've actually heard from you in a more formal setting. So I know we've attended Anzac Day and various things, but it's good to actually have the opportunity to hear from you and understand how Warrington is really progressing and something, you know, I believe our community should be really proud of as well. The older school community.
The last time I attended was when Ashley Linga hijacked me, asked me to come. And like, yeah, in about 2015, 2016.
Years ago, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. And let's adjourn the morning too. You need to. Councillor Certainty, you need to restate. Second was Councillor Derek, was it? Councillor Bruce, sorry, Councillor Bruce. You're going to reinstate standing orders?
Oh, yes.
Councillor Certainty moved that, you have to second to reinstate. Have we put that? All those in favour? Against, carried?
Yeah.
Now we might adjourn the morning too. Councillor, we'll resume the meeting after our morning tea break, and thank Duncan Lovelock, as Principal Executive, for his presentation, very informative. Moving on, as we do the report for the General Manager, we're up to item 3 in the General Manager's report, being the Works Progress Report, and to do the infrastructure projects. Looking for a mover and the second for that report, please. Here, Councillor Higgins, second. Councillor Williamson, Councillor Higgins.
Just as a report reads.
Thank you, Councillor. I've just been reminded during the morning tea break that the General Manager has some further information that pertains to this report, so I might just defer to him before we actually consider that any further.
Councillors, can you go to page 15 of that Works Progress Report? I'm pleased to announce that the Warren-Shire Council has been successful in the first Murray-Darling Basin Economic Program Round 3 for the Warren Showground Racecourse Complex Improvement for $250,000. On the second one, we've been successful with the Shire Minerals, Water Reservoirs and Grain Silo Minerals Program for $250,000. With the third one, the Carter Oval Lighting Project, we've been successful for $500,000. And for the next one on page 16, we've been successful for $500,000 for the Monkey Gar Creek Macquarie Marshes bird viewing platform and parking project.
That's an exceptionally good news.
That's 250,000, 500. That's $1.5 million. No. Aaron was trying to work out how long I was going to hold that under wraps. I thought I did that very, very well. Yeah, you did. Because my cup is always half full, what did miss out was so far that we've received was the $850,000 for Bob Christensen Reserve. We didn't get all of the race course. We asked for $1 million of the race course, and we didn't get. We asked for $1 million of signage and mural stuff. But so with those two, it's a pretty good start.
So tell me about the race course there.
The,
Is it very specific, or can we allocate the resources in the manner?
The application was $500,000 for, the underground sprinkler system and $500,000 of improvements to the rest of the facility, mostly grandstand stuff. The real problem is that, the real main part of it was going to be trying to get an underground sprinkler system that works out there, because the track is actually suffering. But now we have to work out what our conditions are. Whether we can do anything on the track with 250,000, or we have to go and build in grandstand area.
I think that's an excellent result, and can you please point out congratulations to the projects team, infrastructure projects team, and I know that you, Gary, did a lot of work in getting this up and running with Kerry and Beck. That is an outstanding result, and you know what it will mean is some of those projects that we've been again wishing for and certainly wishing to see complete. At the Showground Racecourse, the big lights in Carter Oval, you know, how good is it that these things are going to progress in a pretty timed way. You know, we start these projects and it's amazing how they eventually fall into place. So, yeah, full credit to the team who put in those applications, and yeah, I'm so grateful to them, and our community should be so grateful to them for doing such an excellent job in getting them to fruition. That's just wonderful news. Yeah, excellent. So, Councillor Higgins, you did a wonderful motion there. You didn't know you were a part of, but wow. No, very, very good. You've thrown me off course a little bit, but is there any questions, comments regarding that report of the General Manager regarding in relation to infrastructure projects that we're applying for? Beyond the recommendation of the information we received from Navy. Councillor Walker.
I'm just wondering, through this mayor, well, it's pretty obvious about the roundabout and the main street, and do we have money for that to progress, or?
We don't have any money. We're going to the Town Improvement Committee meeting next week. It's on the 29th. It's quite a comprehensive report going to what we can do in Main Street. We actually said in that report, at this point in time, we do not have any money. Right? It does include the roundabout, of which I've also made a comment in the report that we pursued the Transport for New South Wales, who owns the roundabout, and I've previously been advised in the past that they will provide for the replacement of the roundabout, that they will not enter into any contribution towards the outside curbs, not be part of it. But there's a fair bit of work down the Main Street. I've also recommended that we extend the areas to include the library on the northern end and the courthouse on the other end, just to make it more finished and more complete, and with some changes. I've also indicated in the report that we moved into a 10-year plan, and that we are accepted that it will be in stages, right, as we can score some dollars from outside. So it gives us the ammunition to progress with chasing dollars for the Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, Rolly, actually, there is a crack mine under that roundabout. There is a crack water main under that roundabout, AC plug.
Yeah, that's part of the solution as well. It will affect the outside curbs, which will be our responsibility. And we've sort of tried to leave it there for as long as you know, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not there.
Yep.
And there's a congregation of mains there. It's going to be a real exercise to determine where the leak's coming from and work along there. So it'll be a bit of a challenge, and it will be part of the challenge in doing the roundabout part of the mains.
Councillor Friesen.
Just a question, with the HMP Cup Legacy Fund grant, and it was successful in 12,000, and I believe 90,000, how does that work? Do you lose that 12,000 if it's not used in a certain time? How does that all work?
I couldn't be sure, Councillor Dress, but I'll perhaps ask.
What is it?
Administration fees across that one to know. That would be still the refurbishing the Nevertide Courts, is that where that one sits?
I'm unsure, I'd have to check it.
It's on page 16, right down the bottom. It's the Legacy Fund grant, New South Wales Office of Sport / Tennis New South Wales. So what happens at 12 just goes back in their coffers if it's not used by a certain time, or it just sits in there until we get more money?
As a major interest, if there's an extension time limit set on it, by the note, Ms. Engineer, I know a bit more. There's a high chance that we've lost that money because it's an $85,000 project and it's been moved on elsewhere by the organisation.
Okay.
So it's one on the list to actually try to find a full grant for $85,000 or around that figure for the Nevertire tennis court reconstruction. The $12,000 that we got wouldn't have done the fencing.
Okay, thank you.
One further question, swimming pool refurbishment. Manage their open development. Where are we at? Are we emptying the pool, or has it been empty, or haven't been down there? Phone call coming back to do some work. Where are we up to?
Yes, they're coming back in the month of July. They haven't got back to me with a confirmed date yet.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Irving, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask two questions for clarification? So the first one is with the storage facilities that are planned for it to be constructed in early August with the Rays cricket and soccer. Is that aligned with the plan and consultation, I guess, with those groups?
It's the next, that whole project is the next project that the Infrastructure Project Control Group will concentrate on.
Okay, thank you. Very good.
Well, you have to be mindful there's been some changes, particularly with the water, the tanks being in place where potentially might have been athletics events being held, etc. So that planning part will need to have to be, will need to be revisited, so we'll be very clear about where things will happen. We have the additional money for lighting, that's something that can go ahead as well. So we do really need to have everything planned. The general manager saying, okay, this is where we really are. So that's good. I wonder if I might just like to indulge into the mover and the seconder to add that, if appropriate, we give approval to the council or council officers to affix the seal to accept any funding that's required in the funding deed. And so we don't have to revisit this as another. That's number 4. So it reads there as before. If required, the authority will be granted to the mayor and the general manager to fix the seal of council to any associated documents to enable the agreements to be executed for the Murray Darling Basin Economic Development Program Part 3. So we were happy with that. Second was Councillor Williamson, I think, was it? You second with that?
Yeah.
Williamson.
Yeah. You happy with that, Councillor Williamson? Councillor. So any further comments, questions? Yes, Councillor.
The shortfall in bird lighting, will you find that somewhere?
No, it's not a shortfall with lighting anymore.
Oh, you've got enough now with the
500,000 is ideal.
But did you get the 500?
500 out of 500.
Yes.
I beg your pardon, we only got 1,500. Sorry.
So I'm still trying to be half full. Not half empty. We got 250,000 out of $1 million for the Showground Racecourse Complex. 250,000 out of $1 million for the signage and mural, and mural was $500,000 and the signage was $500,000. They've given us 250,000 to go and do some mural work. The rest of the stuff was 500,000 out, 500,000 over lighting, and
500,000 and 500,000 for the Monkey Yard Creek inquiry marshals for the viewing platform and parking.
That's really, sounds good. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mr Mayor,
Certainly, Councillor.
is it okay? Just, I thought it was quite good that we applied for funding for a pathway from the Bob Christensen Reserve to Dubbo Street. I have heard from community members their concerns about access for those people that live out that way as well to come in that showground road area. So, you know, would that be pursued, I guess, further? If we were unsuccessful, but
It's just, it's again, go onto the list of projects looking for grants.
yeah. So it will come in that way, not, yeah, is that what I'm thinking, down the showground?
Yeah, it was the first priority to be closer to the road and not completely following the levee through people's property. For the obvious reason back the other way.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding that report to do with infrastructure projects and where they are, where they will continue to be? Yeah. I think, you might bring up, we already allocated some money to the lighting at Carn Oval from our previous budget.
And part of the project's to stop on
So that might, what we might be able to do is reallocate some of that funding in that case. Is that potentially?
No.
No, it's all going to be used.
Yeah, right, and if I'm going to put the poles up and the lights,
Yep.
the underneath is supposed to be funded within the current project.
That's what I'm.
That funding from that comes from the drought.
Fair fund, yes, yeah.
Understand.
Yeah.
It's contained within the budget.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm getting, myself getting slightly locked up. Anyway. Yeah, so, yeah, sorry, stepping back a bit, stepping back a bit, yeah, we have allocated some money to light, that was going to do the underground works that came from one of the rounds of drought funding, one of the two rounds of drought funding. So that's been set aside, now this will then hopefully allow us to complete the towers and the actual lights themselves. So, am I correct?
We'll check it out.
We'll check it out.
No, it's definitely from drought funding.
Yes, yeah.
174.
Yeah. Very good. Any further questions on the infrastructure projects report from the general manager? So in case you put that, all those in favour, against carried. Moving on to item 4 of the general manager report, the delivery program progress report. This is our 4-year program. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Sturdy, Councillor Irving, Councillor Sturdy.
No, just haven't got any sticky notes in there.
Any further comments, questions regarding the 4-year delivery plan? Councillor Irving.
Thank you to the general manager for really reviewing this and having a more accurate indication, I guess, of where we're at with delivering these projects and plans. So just a question, with the business development facilitator, yeah, on the first page, it's got a mention there, on the first page of the report, it's got a yellow, obviously. So, yeah, so do you know the time frame? Are we going to, how soon? It says that was soon to be appointed or soon.
Started on Tuesday, the 15th of March. June.
Yeah,
June, and we've sat down and had a good discussion with the assistant supervisor and assistant director. Still pretty well finalised what they're going to do for us, and really it's only 2.5 days a week for us and 2.5 days a week for the work. I've spoken on the phone a couple of times, or by email a couple of times. Is aware of our requirements, and most probably will meet, sit and meet the Economic Development Committee I think it's on the 7th of July.
It's 7th of July, so he'll be in person at that meeting?
Yes.
Yes, so Councillor Irving, he'll be, that's the first engagement he'll have with, directly with council laws, yes, on the 7th of July.
That's exciting.
Mr. Mayor, well, I suppose ask you the question, this new person, media or business development facilitator, is he time going to speak to the whole of council and what he's doing and
One of the many jobs he might do. Yep. Yeah, I think we need to give him perhaps a little bit of time coming in. I think meeting first with the Economic Development Committee, I'll give him a little bit of an idea of where we are, and if you already understand what the things that we're asking for, but just give him a little bit of time, because one is, he needs to understand the base as where we are, and then have some thought about, okay, where we might go, and then where we might go, avenues of funding to facilitate that. So, yeah, just a little bit of time, so it's a worthwhile presentation, is probably what I'm saying. Any further questions regarding the delivery program? Yeah.
yeah, 1.4.1 about the police. I noticed that he's been talking to the executive minister and staff. We used to also have one as a council. Is that possible in the future?
I think particularly when we have a new sergeant appear, and again, that when they've had a little bit of time on the ground, then we can have a very worthwhile meeting, invite them to come to a full council meeting. We did speak with Acting Sergeant Damien Davies, that was just before the last council meeting, was it or not? It was after that. I've forgotten the meeting dates, but his view at the moment was things in the Warren town are relatively under control at present, and use that advisor at present. So, but and the new sergeant will arrive sometime next month, is it? I think, from memory.
June, it says here. You started to commence in late June.
Very soon, next week. Next Monday, I think.
Starting Monday.
Monday. Okay, thank you.
I'm over the wrong throat.
What did you get?
Thank you. So let's give that person time to, now that we'll make it a formal Gary and I'll probably meet with the sergeant and then flag that we'd like to have the sergeant speak to the Councillor Irving, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had some really positive feedback on General Manager's meeting with the TAFE not that long ago. They said that it was a meeting in May, and they said that they felt that it strengthened the relationship between Council and TAFE in terms of looking at courses available for our local workforce, things like that. General Manager, did you have anything to add on that?
I understand. I've just made sure that relevant staff within the organisation, such as human resources and workforce safety and risk, and to a lesser degree the senior management team, just so aware. I want to make sure that TAFE survives in Warren and we can be part of the help.
Yeah. Just for Council's information, Council has endeavoured over many years to engage with TAFE and ask them to offer the courses that are appropriate to our staff. They've made presentations to Council. Unfortunately, they, in my view, have often not followed through. I don't know if that's changed more recently, but they actually haven't been able or willing, despite the assurances they could do, make courses available, actually get them to happen. And yeah, take on board very much the General Manager's sentiment. We want TAFE to survive, but they have to also be able to provide the courses and be willing to go out of the way to be a bit proactive and provide courses if it's not quite exactly what we want. And the number, lots of these courses will be quite generic, so I can't see any reason why they shouldn't be able to evolve and continue to have an active take on mind. Councillor Williamson, I remember a few presentations from TAFE and the previous general manager mentioned that, yeah, we tried to engage and it didn't actually occur.
A lot of the leadership side, staff way, hopefully they might be progressing to be able to do the needs of the town. And hopefully all the changes work out that way. That's what we hope for. If you want it to survive, it's a big part of the town. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions on the, Councillor Sir, yes.
I was speaking with somebody who was trying to use some of the buildings and take to do some workshops and stuff. There's supposed to be a couple of buildings over there that are now out of action because of this line dance. So even though we might be liaising with TAFE, there might not be all of the facilities to be able to be utilised, which is a shame.
I'm not aware of that, Councillor Sir, but thank you. We'll endeavour to make use of whatever facilities and courses that TAFE have that applicable to our organisation.
Mayor, there's actually another report very similar coming as the end of term report, which will just tidy this up. Some of them might, within 2 months, we probably might be able to change many of the amber, we might, but we get another report in August, the last council meeting of this council.
Thank you. Anything further on excuse me, item 4, which is the delivery program progress report? If nothing further, we'll move with that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 5, the regional collaboration phase in relation to the replacement of the Barona JO. I'm happy to move that from the chair. Someone happy to second, Councillor Williamson. I might just defer particularly to the general manager on this one because he's had more contact with the general manager's forum and a potential way forward in terms of those councils willing to be vendors and a structure that might potentially work.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. At the General Managers Forum on the 4th of June, the attending General Managers were positive about some form of organisation collaboration in the Orana region, not wanting to have any real name yet because of what's progressing or not progressing in relation to joint organisations with the Minister for Local Government. But progressing quietly but still quickly was probably something by the end of July, further meeting all the general managers and mayors of the area. This report is really just making sure that this council fully agrees and provides support for the progression of some sort of regional collaboration organisation. And to make sure that budget that we've got in for next year is available to use to progress things. We just don't want to look as though we're trying to compete with the joint organisation process, so the state government doesn't get their back up.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's see where it pans out. Yeah, no further comment except that we've accounted for this in our budget, so it's not as though it's a new on anything. I think it will be a valuable organisation to have a wider regional collaborative group that might advocate on our behalf for the northwest of the state. Any further comments, questions before we put the recommendation? Yeah, Councillor.
Thank you. I noticed us reading the strengths and weaknesses, and I thought if we can, when we move forward on this change, if it happens, could add some strengths to the region. I think since COVID, the tourism factor, it's just booming because of COVID, and I think that is a real strength now. I mean, we can add that to agriculture and mining, and then also solar energy is another strength for the region, well, especially out this way. So, yeah, I just noticed that those two things were maybe not in there, and that we could add them when it's appropriate down the track.
Any further comments, questions regarding the proposed regional collaboration organisation? In the case of put back, all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to the final item of the report from the General Manager, that being the 2021 Local Roads Congress. Looking for a mover and a seconder, and then we might defer to the General Manager. Mover is Councillor Surkey, seconder Councillor Bruce. We'll defer to the General Manager, St. Councillor Brewer, who was our delegate, is absent from today's meeting, and
Mr Mayor, from the conversations that I've had with Councillor Brewer, I believe he felt that the day was worthwhile. The majority of the presentations were of interest to him and Warren Shire, which is important. We were also able to actually go and see one out of the two people that we went and saw NLC Sam Faraway, and talking about 4 or 5 issues that were pertinent, very important, which he's progressing. But I was very pleased from the organisation that I'm a member of, has done a pretty good job. There were about 90 delegates there, and well organised, and most presentations are relevant to us, which is important. It's no good turning up there and everything's relevant to metropolitan councils, which I've seen happen before. This one didn't go on like that. They're still progressing the final communique, because it's really a joint congress by the Institute of Public Works Engineering Australasia, New South Wales Division, and the local government New South Wales. And so both organisations are having to put together the final communique. That's where I've also started to introduce because it was announced by the Minister Toole that the round 3 of the Fixing Local Roads program, and that's why we've started to work out what should be our priorities for that important project and where some of the funds should come from as contribution. I have 9 out of the 10 presentations, if anyone wants to have a look, and I've got the ability to send any councillor, if you require, a link where you can actually go and check out to make sure that the General Manager and Councillor Brewer are actually there. Video. And I think that it's worthwhile, Mr Mayor, that when Councillor Brewer at the next meeting, we should see if I've actually summarised his thoughts as well as that. But I think he was happy with his Sydney trip.
Thank you.
And I think the engineer apologises, could we get there?
I think what it does is highlights the short time frame that our staff have had and us as councillors have had to react to that round 3 to the local roads. That meeting was on early June, 7th of June. We're going to have it all finalised by the 5th of July PM on the 5th of July. So it's a really tight time frame. So I've worked using our best endeavours and a lot of energy being expended to get to the stage where we need to be to ask for some really significant grant funding. So take my hat off to our staff and the roads committee on that as well. But it's just going to take an enormous amount of work to get to where we need to be in a position to apply for those grants. So yeah, thank you for doing that. Yeah. Anyway, we won't have it any other way. Engineering services, we want the work and want our roads to be continuing to improve. So yeah, that's it. Anything further questions on the local roads conferences? Nothing further, with that, all those in favour, against, carried. Comes to the reports of the Division of Manager of Finance Administration, first of those being the reconciliation certificate. Looking for a mover and a seconder there. Councillor Williamson, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Williamson.
I know, just for the last Shy meeting, we're waiting on funds to come back in from what we paid for major jobs. Also waiting on loan funding to come through, so they'll come in by the 1st of July, so our manager findings. Indicated from last week.
The bank balance will look substantially different at our next council meeting. What
Yes.
is into Councillor Williamson, I think, yeah.
Yes, correct.
In the positive sense, if you like.
Yes, it should be around that $10 or $11 million.
Councillor Walker, you've got a question on the reconciliation?
Admin and administration, are they the fair grants, is it coming in one lump sum? Is that not-
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the OLG have advanced us 1.624 million, which we received early this month. So it's not incorporated in this financial statement because it's up to the end of May, and it's equivalent to approximately 50%. We won't know the final figures probably until about September of this year as to what our FAG grant will be. So, yeah, from the federal government budget, they're the ones that actually said they're going to advance it. They give the funds to the state then allocate it to us. So they take that little divvy out of it. So we've received approximately 50%, but we don't know the exact figure as yet. But we have received that.
Is that an ongoing thing, or is it just?
That has happened the last 4 years. But prior to that, and that's when all the councils were looking really bad. They stopped it 1 year, so we didn't receive the advance, so we received a half of the previous year, and all the councils were in the red because of the fact that they hadn't got their full allocation for their FAG grant. They're going to bring it to account the year you've had it. That was the time that the state government decided to take it to everyone's accounts and said, well, councils are losing $50 billion, a year because of that sort of fact. So since then, we've received it again for the last 4 years. So,
Thank you. Any further questions regarding the reconciliation certificate? Item 1 of the Division of Finance Administration report. Being passed with that, all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to item 2, the state of the rates and annual charges. Councillor Bruce, second, Councillor Survey. Councillor Bruce.
That's my comment, just have your view. Thank you.
Any comments, questions regarding the state of the rates and annual charges? Nothing further, we'll put that, all those in favour, against, carried. Moving on to item 3, the works progress report as it pertains to finance and administration projects. Councillor Derrick is reported an interest in this, not necessarily a cumulative interest, and has chosen to absent herself from this discussion. So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for this item. Councillor Survey, second. Councillor Survey, seconder.
Yeah.
No, Councillor Irving, second. So, Councillor Survey, sorry.
We're happy to move the recommendation, and if the manager would like to expand on anything, that would be lovely.
Agree with me, nothing's basically changed since I've written the report this point in time.
Thank you.
It's probably a question for Council Laws, it's just to the Manager Finance Administration regarding just the tidying up of the council building, how we're going and what we might achieve within the budget that we have. So a little bit still to be done there, and how maybe just an update if you wouldn't mind.
Finished, man. A1 glass, as supposed to be coming to do final measurements for the interview room that we're looking at putting in. And the carpet for the flooring has arrived, it's down at the depot. We'll be able to do all of that in the back door, but the moving of the tea room and creation of the disabled toilet will be on hold till all the accounts come in to see where we're at. So it's going to be very tight, if you like. Yeah. So I just want to figure out all the accounts are and not to ask them for the fees for the project for bidding out buildings to go ahead and budget for it.
Is there any further comments on regarding infrastructure projects under the control of the manager and finance administration? Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is thank you, Finance Manager. So just those listed items outstanding, when you said it's tight, is that the budget from the e-planning grant? Is that do they come under that, or do we have to look for further funding?
Through the Mayor, that's the total project, including the e-grant, and so in the comments column is the money combined, if you like. So points 4, 5 and 6, I'm going to, until we get the other stuff done and finished, I'm not going to start on 4, 5, 6, until I know exactly where we are with regards to the whole project there. I mean, there will be some furnishings for the interview room, which come out of the e-planning grant, and the computer and things to set that up, but maybe not the whole building.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions on the infrastructure projects under control of the manager of finance administration? No, there's nothing further to put back. Those in favour? Yes, carried. Moving on to item. Oh, sorry, we might. Thank you for reminding me. Who's vacancy? Councillor Derek, received the meeting. Moving on to item 4 of the divisional managed finance report. With the adoption of the 2021-22 operational plan estimates. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Zerby. Second, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Zerby.
Happy to move the recommendation. If there's been no submissions, we must be on the right track. Thank you. Thank you.
No submissions at all, so any no comments at the front desk even, or no?
I have received
No
nothing,
phone calls?
nothing, no phone calls, not a thing.
Okay.
We tried this year really hard.
Yeah.
Social media,
Yes.
on and on and on.
Okay, that's what exactly what it is. So that's what it is. It's yeah, we've endeavoured to be out there and let people know. Any further comments, questions then regarding the adoption of the operational plan and the estimates for the next forthcoming financial year? There's nothing further to put that. All those in favour? Again, carried. Item 5, the making and levying of rates and fixing of charges for 21-22. Someone happy to move that? Thank you, Councillor Irving. Secondly, Councillor Beach. Councillor Irving.
I'm happy to move the recommendation. I do have a couple of questions though. One's on number 10.
Yep.
Oh yes, you know, with the 6% interest charge, that's kind of after we've looked at the, what's that policy where we give people a bit of lenience with hardship. So that's kind of, it's kind of a last resort, isn't it, that interest charge, or if unless they contacted you?
The interest is set by the act, and you must charge, not the rate. The council can adopt any rate, like that's what the maximum rate that the ALG provide. But interest must be charged on overdue rates once the day after they fall overdue. So when it comes to the hardship policy, we call it a hardship, we can certainly go to the arrangements with them and not take any more further action, like legal action, to collect the rates, to help them out. And in extreme cases of hardship, we can write off the interest, but we can't stop charging it. So we can't just go to a company and say, no, we're not going to charge you interest because you're a good person. We must do that under the Act, but we can write it off or waive it off later on at a different point in time. But under the Act, we must charge interest on any overdue amounts.
Thank you. And this is my second question, is to do with Kai and the potable water. Is the charges a bit higher than Metatyre and at the aerodrome? Is that because I'm pretty sure they don't have potable water at the moment, but is it coming? Is that because they're getting potable water, or I didn't think they had Kai had potable water. So that's
It's say bore water, and not probably, well, it's probably not potable, it's bore water, but it's, with Kai, Kai used to only have a 400 kilolitre allowance, now it's gone up to the 500 kilolitre, because on the old bore, we couldn't supply water. And it's basically got to be a little bit of cost recovery, and it costs us a fair bit of money to run the Collie bore, especially pumping it 7 to 8 k's into town, and all the problems that we had out there. So that's why they're a lot more expensive than what it is in say, Metatyre and out to the airport.
Thank you. That was all. Thank you,
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding the making of levies and fixing the budget? Nothing further to put that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to reports of the Division Manager of Engineering Services, first of those being the works progress report in relation to roads. For the mover, and second for that, for the Councillor Derrick, Councillor Walker, Councillor Derrick.
And I did think Mr. Mayor, sorry that we don't have the road camp information this time, that's always been interesting, but I'll have to just move the report, thank you.
Any questions? Just going to engineering service regarding roads? No.
Just for the engineering manager, just that last project on page 10 there on the road crossing upgrade, it's got discussions regarding the criminal plan being held, so where are we going with that?
There's almost no progress with the upgrade of the railways. Basically, it's a massive job. A number of stakeholders. You've got Orange, obviously, silos. You've got the RMF, Transport for New South Wales. The people electricity ones we moved. You've got John Holland with State Rail. I think somebody else above me is slowing it down because of that can give no incentive to move on. We've done a survey basically of the site, and we've taken surveys of road usage as well, so we'll have all the information available. That's the sort of thing that I think will come perhaps after an accident or something. Be one of those things that we sit on a too hard bench until something brings it.
Thank you.
Any further questions regarding the first report? Being nothing further, with that, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 2, Division Manager of Engineering Services report, that the works progress report in regard to town services. I'm happy to do with that. Councillor Walker, second, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Walker.
I'd just like to thank the Divisional Manager of Engineering Services for putting together these reports on who does it, but it's very thorough and we know what's going on. It's an improvement on what we've seen before, so thank you for that. I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just where is The expenditure columns on the reports now include commitment costing. Just so you're aware, so for example, a very large order's been, if you look at page 13, councillors, very large order's been written out for the Navitolo Reservoir refurbishment, because the contract is tender is accepted by the council, and we haven't quite spent 588,000, and we've committed to spend a little bit, as an example, so you know. And that's how the managers know, can quickly know if there is a problem with the budget, because they've committed what they're supposed to and say, hold it. That's the idea, isn't it?
I wish they could have won that.
More, right in tune with what we're actually. The question that you just mentioned, new researchers, Oxley Park river water pumping station, we visited that not that long ago in terms of trying to have that running efficiently. A comment on what we're doing there and what's different to what we did 12 months ago. On page 13, Oxley Park river water pumping station.
We're looking at upgrading the pumps there to just make it more effective and get them in and out of the creek and out of the river whenever possible. Restricted access.
Didn't we modify all that at the time we dealt with those pumps? 12
Still not satisfactory around the whole river.
Aye.
That's probably we've got to have a review so that we do a pipe or we can pull it out.
So I think on top of that, we're trying to get the same pumps there with Ellington as well, so we've got nothing to keep one pump in storage.
So we've got a
We're more flexibility in the reserve. That's what we're trying to get to.
Thank you.
Very, very good water and sewage committee meeting 6 weeks ago, directed at the May council meeting. The town services manager is progressing it. I think it says the 18th, but he's got things closing this week until
unofficially not considered. Negotiate.
Thank you. Any further comments regarding the town services works progress report? Nothing further, put that, all those in favour? Against, carried. Item 3, relating to the fleet and the workshop progress report. Move that. Councillor Walker, second. Councillor Walker.
I'm not on the committee or, I'm just asking the division manager engineering services. I noticed that some of, and we brought this up before, some of the plan is very old. And hours been spent on them, I'm not sure, so where does it stand now? The replacement program, money spent?
Replacement program, we are lacking, we haven't had a plan committee meeting for some time. We have got some things from 2021 on vendor panel, replacing the wood, a number of replacements undertaken, we're working on that as well. The new plan replacement programs, as in the long-term plan, and it does cater for the disposal of some of the more aged items of the plant, particularly the smaller items of the plant. Most of the larger items of the plant have a replacement program intact with what's expected of their duty that they do and their age. But a lot of the smaller items of the plant, are sort of, we keep persevering with them, such as the ride on rails and things like that, which don't feel that good. I'll just point out that the workshop at the moment is run by one coordinator and one employee that's not quite out of his apprenticeship, he'll be out of his apprenticeship next month. That's the extremity of the staff in the workshop. We have advertised twice for a motor mechanic, without any success whatsoever. Once we've advertised once, it goes.
But, yeah, I think they're moving
Moving in. So that's where we're battling, and what I must also point out, that workshop coordinator reports fairly heavily with me, and I take up a considerable amount of his time with some of the purchase and acquisition proposals, and there's the analysis of those quite often recommended for purchase. So they're doing quite a good job. I get a weekly update on the progress of the workshop, and they're going quite well.
Just quickly, that workshop operator,
Workshop coordinator.
is he also a mechanic?
Yeah, and an auto electrician as well. So very, very capable. And, you know, in the past where we've just sent things away to be repaired, probably my influence, I like to repair them in-house so that we know exactly how it operates and it works. But I would like a greater number of staff in.
Thank you.
Did you anything further on the fleet workshop progress report? Nothing further, we'll put that all in favour. Yes, carried. We have item 4, the Division Management Engineering Services report relating to the construction of a transfer station at the UMR Waste Depot. And someone, Councillor Surgeon, happy to hear that. Councillor Walker. Councillor Surgeon.
Yeah, I did query the general manager in relation to whether, because we haven't had an actual committee meeting, as to whether that needed to happen first, but he did go through it and explained it all, that we haven't really changed much since the May meeting, other than the fact that we're shortening the length of the retaining wall, and there are plans going to be currently worked on and will be put to the next committee meeting. So given all of that information and the fact that we can get that bit of extra money from the domestic waste restricted funds, I'm happy to make that recommendation.
So the background is we went to tender, or what was it, tender or tender, and we're way out of the ballpark in terms of what we could afford. So we bring it back in-house at a shorter distance of.
Mr. Chairman, we reduced the length of the wall. The length of the wall was initially 40 metres. We've reduced it back to 20, and those plans are being prepared now for construction. I feel very confident that we can do the work in-house using contractors as well as our own staff, and we don't have to pay for any profit or risk on top of what we did on the tenders. I think the tenders were some of them that come in were outlandish.
And so is your view that 20 metres of wall is sufficient to operate the transfer station effectively?
Sufficient, yes, particularly as we're going to have one truck in the bay, right? It gives us a far better control where we still only have the one truck and we've got 40 metres of water. We've got a certain amount of dumping outside the bounds of the truck, whereas we've got to construct the upper segment, the gates and the top, the ability to keep humans from falling out, reduce the chance of humans getting into it, as well as making sure that all the rubbish gets onto the back of the truck if that's possible. The truck will be an aged vehicle that comes from the depot to line with the plant replacement program. There's a little fair bit of work on in the workshop to construct that truck to suit, because you do have to avoid broken windows, panels damage and all those things.
Think that any further requests for information regarding the UMR, construction of the UMR waste transfer station? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. I appreciate Councillor Surdity's inquiries prior to the meeting, because I was quite concerned because we were informed at our last meeting that we would get a detailed action plan, which I would assume if we're making the facility, it says at the bottom of the page, a smaller facility. We would certainly really need to know a bit more detail on that facility to know accurate costings and yeah, I wonder how to get to those costings without a plan. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
The costings, Mr. Chairman, have been calculated from the sub-drawings or substandard drawings that have been compiled to develop what we want, and we've been given them to the design company to actually formally negotiate, give us the steel lists of steel formats and everything that goes into the concrete structured wall. So more of the work's been done in-house than what's been envisaged as part of that. We're basically just getting the plans up and running for presentation and for accuracy for our setting up. So it's still exactly the same. The stormwater is to come from the dam in the garbage area. It's exactly the same level. To go into the deck, the floor on the deck where the truck will be, exactly the same level. The only thing that's going to be altered is the length of the wall on the side, and obviously the fencing will be reduced, top fencing will be reduced as well. Yeah, I think there's been a fair bit of effort in that gone into preparation of these costs.
Thank you. I know that we appreciated the presentation of the plans at the previous meeting.
The president plans pretty to me that the plans, when they come in, we will be developing a environmental committee, waste committee, and making the presentations there for all of the committees.
Thank you very much.
Any further regarding the construction of the transfer station, the waste line? Questions? Nothing further, we'll put that all those in favour? Yes, carried. Moving on to the report of the development, management development, health and development. First of that's been the development applications. I think there are a couple of those we'll get to. Someone happy to move those? Councillor Derrick, Councillor Bruce, Councillor Derrick.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to move recommendation. So one of them's been programmed for a while, so for the information, it's been approved in the end. So that's all good. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, Councillor Walker.
I can ask the same question that Councillor Dress might be wanting to ask what stop the clock means.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as a reference to that, you've requested additional information because we have to assess applications within a legislative timeframe. So a stop the clock is when the assessment process time period is stopped until you're provided with that information, so then days removed from the assessment time period.
There we go. Thank you. So I think it would be pertain particularly to city councils when they've got but at least it gives an indication you're waiting for information council is waiting for information as opposed to the other way around. The proponents are waiting for council to get back.
The developer puts in a halfway application, it's not
This is for exactly. Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding item one of the major health and developments report? The agency for applications. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Moving on to item 2 of the major health and development report that relates to the progress of infrastructure projects. Someone happy to move the recommendation of information to be received and noted? Councillor Williamson, Councillor Irving. Councillor Williamson.
I think it's all in front of us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The manager of Health and Development Services has been successful with is it a $5,000 or $10,000 grant? $5,000. The very last one on page 3. The engineer has got a small little bit of money in his in an area that he's going to do some extension of drainage works over at Tiger Bay wetlands, and Manager Health and Development Services has been able to get a $5,000 grant contribution to help the engineer do a bigger and better job. It's good. Very, very good when it happened very quickly, didn't it?
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Walker.
I might be off the track, but Mr. Mayor, I know it's got the comments about the two houses. I don't quite understand. The second house, all these complaints have been put in. Where are they standing now? Have you heard back from any of them? What you've submitted?
Mr. Mayor, we're hoping for a fairly serious and formal committee of the whole closed council report to the August meeting on progress of what we're actually going to do and how far we go. We'll call it, I'm at the infrastructure project manager, it's in 21, isn't it? Right. 21. We're following at the moment two slightly different processes with each house. There is a chance that both houses will be the same process, and it will be subject to that August council meeting report if we can time it right.
Is this the cost to council for all these legal or putting in any costs associated with this process?
And that will be in the report, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions regarding item 2 of the Management Health Development Report? Nothing further, we'll put that all those in favour. Against, carried. There are no notice of motions, questions with notice. There are no matters of urgency, not aware of. No confidential matters, in which case we can conclude the meeting. If we conclude the meeting.